All right, hey, welcome back to our series called The 10 Commandments of Progressive Christianity, looking at the book by Dr. Michael Kruger. My name's Bob. I'm joined here by
Dave.
That's right. And we are looking at these different commandments and saying, are these really the commandments that we should be following, or are there some problems with them? So we've looked at 5 already. Now we're on number 6. The 6th commandment is this: encouraging the personal search is more important than group uniformity. Encouraging the personal search is more important than group uniformity, which is actually kind of an interesting one in today's culture, because there's almost an emphasis on both of these things within today's modern culture. Everybody should be it's the self should be elevated, but yet there's like all these group, culture dynamics that are out there in the conversation. But in the book, Michael Kruger says this is the commandment that's dealing with the question: does Christianity stifle free thinking? Is the church just interested in protecting its own authority? And I don't know, Dave, what do you think?
Well, yeah, so it's all about free thinking for themselves rather than receiving the truth that was once passed down to the saints, right? So the apostles gave a deposit of truth down to the next generation, and we're told to guard the treasure and to entrust these things to faithful men who will also be able to teach others. This goes against what we're commanded to do. Christianity is not about our never-ending journey to God. It's about God's completed journey back to us. And so I think this question gets some things completely backwards. I do think that this chapter does highlight some important things for us to learn from. Some ways that people have asked questions or expressed doubts have not been well received by the church, and we should be more open to people who are genuinely wrestling with questions.
It's a fair critique. The church should be better at allowing people to ask good questions, especially if they're wrestling. Yeah.
It is. The unfair thing is, I think that he's saying that all churches are necessarily like this. I don't think that that's true, that all churches shut down questions. Maybe some are better at creating environments that are more tender toward questions than others, but I don't think it's true for the evangelical church as a whole. So I don't think that's fair. In terms of group uniformity, what he brings up in his chapter is more like church discipline being a shunning, shameful problem. If I don't conform to the group. And he says, Jesus kind of bucked against the group and Jesus bucked against the system. And part of that's true, but also the scriptures are pretty clear that there is this thing called church discipline, and Jesus believed in church discipline. A while back we went through 1 Corinthians chapter 5 where Paul addresses this kind of embarrassing, sinful behavior where this man is, inappropriately having a relationship with his stepmother, and Paul, disciplines him. So there's got to be room for the church to exercise their authority in some way. So it's not supposed to be in a judgmental spirit. It's always for the good of the person who's being disciplined. Yeah. And so there is such a thing as a judgmental, condemning spirit. And if that's you, Jesus would say you need to repent. You need to recognize that, the ground is level at the foot of the cross, and we're not better than anybody. Yeah. But maybe if someone is calling attention to a certain behavior that's unbiblical, maybe you need to listen. Yeah. Maybe you need to be open to what God might show you there.
Well, and church discipline, rightly understood, is all about restoration. So it's about confronting somebody who's in sin, who's ultimately harming themselves in the community, for the purpose of restoring them to the church body. It's not a stifling. It's not meant to be a stifling or an authoritarian type of thing. It's meant to bring about holiness.
Yeah, I like this one paragraph, and I'll just kind of close up this video with the way Kruger finishes this chapter. He says this: I believe this 6th progressive commandment suffers from a number of assumptions or misunderstandings. It assumes, number 1, there's no absolute truth without proving such a thing. Number 2, it assumes that the church doesn't welcome questions when, generally speaking, it does. And it misunderstands the nature and purpose of church discipline, which is, as you just said, is for the purpose of restoration, for the good of the recipient.
Right.
So.
Good. Well, thanks for breaking that down for us. Hopefully you come back for commandment number 7 coming up next.